Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Sprinklebeard, and today we're doing our Evaluate the Epic on Delores, the Muse of Desire. There's a great start. Delores. Delores is a support champion in this game. Now, I'm going to say a support champion and not a healer for a key reason is that even though Delores does have a heal very similar to Autumn, it's a heal that we're not really ever going to depend on. Yes, it will add a little bit of healing over time, or yes, I'm sure there's going to be that clutch moment of the extra, 500 to 1,000 HP that she heals. As you get like perfect gear, I've seen it get up as crazy as like 3,000. But I wouldn't say that's a normal case for most players. So with this being said, understand that even though she is marked as a healer, we are going to kind of be mostly ignoring the healing factor, or it's going to be an additive in this review. It's not going to be the main focus of the review. So design-wise, this champion is beautiful, and then what I like even more is that because she's the Muse of Desire, her animation is literally her dancing, which is absolutely phenomenal. It's absolutely hilarious that you see all these warriors doing these giant big combos, and then you just have Delores just doing her little dance, just being herself, and her dance is great. It's absolutely fantastic. So, stat-wise, she is a support champion. So a lot of her stats are going to be subpar on average, but it's not what she does. It's not how many stats she has. It's what she does with them. Some big things of note. So her HP is kind of low. Her defense and MR is actually extremely respectable. It's not like our Mary or Aeon where they are like crippled in the defense department. Her attack is in a good place, and I say good, and that's going to be the big thing we want to focus on. It's around 2,500. Her cost is only 5 though, so she's one of the cheapest champions you can get out, meaning you can either choose to get her out super early, or you can kind of get her out in combination with anybody else that you want. Her attack interval is 2, and this cannot be adjusted. That is a huge thing about Delores, is do not bother with attack speed. Rage regen will be your friend, though. She has the highest rage in the game of 18. I was not aware it was 18. I thought it was 14. That's a huge deal. That explains a whole lot more on building Delores later. So skill-wise, she grants attack-based healing to all allies in range. Healing frequency will not be affected by attack speed. So here, there's no reason to have attack speed on her. We don't get any advantage from it. So attack-based healing, just to review this real quick, first, we take into your target's max HP into account. Then the caster, in this case Delores, her attack stat is then going to heal based upon that max HP. Lastly, it is adjusted by the healing effect. So if you're ever wondering what stats you should focus on for bigger heals, that is your recipe, right? Make sure that your target has as much HP as possible. Make sure that your main, like your healer, right? So in this case, it would be Delores, would be as many stats into attack percentage as possible. And then lastly, healing effect to make the most use of it. However, again, this is additive in her kit. Now, we do want attack percentage on her, but please understand that the healing is not why we ever picked Delores. It is her ultimate, so we're just going to jump right into it. Applies a 30% inspiration to other allies in range for 14 seconds. So what is inspiration? Increases attack proportionally to the attack of the caster. While the effect is active, other buffs affecting inspiration will not take effect. So if you had a champion out like Narvi, you can't use Delores, then Narvi to start stacking attack percentages. Additionally, the caster is immune to their own buff. The reason they're immune to their own buff is that if they were able to buff themselves, then their ultimate would have a greater effect, which then would keep snowballing higher and higher. So, does not work that way. So, originally, right, applies a 30% inspiration for 14 seconds. So, whatever 30% of her attack stat is, she's giving to everybody else. So, at base, at 2,500, this means that she's giving 840, because her attack's slightly higher than 2,500. She's giving around 840 attack to all your other champions. understand, like a fully upgraded red weapon is like 960, right? So she is giving a whole red weapon worth of stats of attack to all the champions in range, which then means they are that much higher above that armor value. So your champions are all going to be hitting harder, critting harder. It's going to be amazing. Her inspiration effect, as we give her skill dust, will increase from 30%, and it scales up to 40% inspiration. The effect duration increases by 2 seconds on all accounts. So that goes from your 14 seconds, so 16, 18, 20, 22 seconds worth of an ultimate. That's crazy. It's not the highest, but it's still up there as a very long-lasting ultimate. Here we have skill cost goes down on a bunch of these, and your initial rage goes up. So your initial rage goes up twice, up to 400, and your skill cost goes from 1100 down, so minus 40, minus 80 total, minus 140, minus 200. So her ultimate ends at 900, and you start off with 400 rage. And for the record, you get up there real fast. You get her rage regen is in a very good place at 18. Her passive, 60 seconds after being deployed, permanently increases basic attack's healing multiplier by 5%. Graceful Dancing will have a 50% chance to increase the hero's rage by 100 when it ends. So whenever she does her Graceful Dancing, which is her ultimate, she has a chance to trigger and just gain 100 rage. But as we can see, as we skill her up, this goes from a bonus 100 to a bonus 300 rage. And then the required time to trigger this basic effect goes from 60 seconds down to 50 seconds, where her healing multiplier will increase by 5%. This is beneficial, but understand, yes, the healing is useful, right? We stat-wise, we are still going to be having healing effect in there. It's just, ironically enough, it's kind of the last thing that we want on her. It's useful for sure, but we don't care about it. Majority of the reason that players will play with Delores is this inspiration buff. So we want to play with stats like attack percentage and flat attack. Get it so that your inspiration is giving off the most massive buff that you can. Ideally, we want rage regen on her as well. And as we saw earlier, her rage regen being 18, that means the percentage increase is going to go a lot further on her than pretty much anybody else. There is talk that there's a soft cap of about 40%. I have not thoroughly tested it. It is something that I am looking into testing. I just want to make sure that I have a fair metric for my test, and to see at what point, like we did with the attack speed video, at what point where I feel like at this number you were getting plenty, you don't need to focus on this stat, but every bit helps. It's going to be one of those videos again where I want to see the sweet spot where it's like, 5% rage regen isn't very noticeable. Oh, but 15 is extremely noticeable. Majority of champions get to their ultimate, 2 to 3 seconds faster. That can be a big deal, especially when we're talking about Dragon. Blah, 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 blah. But for Delores, most players, we focus on attack percentage, flat attack. Some players go for that healing effect because they do want her to be causing healing, and it's not bad of a stat for her to have. A lot of players, including myself, we actually care more about her survivability after that. So things like HP percentage and defense percentage for survivability. Rage regen, though, I do think is an incredibly valuable stat on her. It's something I would not skip out on. So if you get something that is attack percentage, flat attack, rage regen, you're pretty well set. Then just any other stat is going to be useful on her besides crit rate and crit damage, obviously. When it comes to her awakenings, Awakening 1, the inspiration effect of Graceful Dancing increases by 20%. So if we remember that her ultimate is 30%, and then it goes up to 40% here in her skill dust, Well, now we add 20% on top of that. So it is a 60% inspiration buff when awakened to 1. Just absolutely bonkers that she will be giving away 60% of her stat. So for those of you who are not good at math, if we're at that 2,500 and we are giving over 50%, 50% would be 1,250. She's giving 60%. That's closer to like your 13 to 1,400, much closer to 1,400 than anything, stat-wise. So 1,400 attack. Just imagine any of your champions getting a red weapon and a half worth of stats, of attack stats, just because Delores ults. Awakening 2, she gets extra HP, and it's 1,200, so very useful. It helps her survive a bit longer. During the effect of graceful dancing, increases the healing multiplier by 10%. So very useful. During her ultimate, now not only is she giving a big attack speed steroid, but she is healing. And again, we don't depend on her as a healer, but every little bit helps. And there are those moments where an extra 1,000 HP is just what you needed to survive something like a dragon breath or a poison tick. You know, her counteracting poisons can obviously be very useful as well. Awakening 4, her attack percentage increases by 5%. So now instead of her having that 2,500, I can't do the math in my head, and I'm not going to bother. Understand, extra 5% stats that she then gives away with all of her other ultimate and abilities. It's fantastic. When graceful dancing ends, increases the chance of increasing rage to 80%. So instead of 50%, it increases up to 80%. Absolutely nuts. Absolutely fantastic. We absolutely love to see it. And there's those times where you will notice she gets this huge bump in rage, and you're like, sweet, her next ult is up a lot sooner than I was expecting. Now let's talk about where Delores is most useful. When we talk about anything, I want to stress that we are using Delores for her ultimate. So wherever you need a big spike in power, that you're okay with it not being non-stop because it is Delores' ultimate. That is her main shtick in this game. And if you took any element of that away, of her giving attack stats to everybody, she would instantly go down in usage. She would be completely ignorable. So when it comes to the campaign, a lot of your boss levels are going to feel the best for Delores. Pretty much nothing else will feel that great unless you have like a big swarm of enemies that you're having trouble killing all of them in a short order. That's where her ultimate can also be very useful. In the Void Rift, there's tons of bosses and mini bosses for you to strike down. So I would say kind of anywhere in the Void Rift where you need extra damage, or if your characters just aren't putting in enough work, Delores can absolutely help push you guys over that edge. In the arena, I have seen her legitimately in every single arena. Her giving an attack stat to anybody else, letting them kill things off more quickly or more efficiently. Absolutely valuable. She is not a first summon in the arena. So you're not going to, like, you know, start off an arena and with your first 5 coins, spend them on Delores. She's absolutely a second summon. I would say if the only exception would be is if you ever do some limit testing and you find that with her ultimate, you can then summon somebody out and then that person can kill things very, very quickly. And if your Delores is good enough that she's ulting like once a wave, which is possible. Raids. Again, anywhere where we need the extra damage. Every single level that is featured here, at some point we're fighting big, bulky versions of something. The melee attack is the one place where we run out of platforms. It's just she's not going to be as effective there. In the endurance round, she typically, depending on how you have her built, but she typically can't out-heal the poison. So do be careful about that. She is not our healer by any means. She's kind of a backup where she helps top people off or she helps slow down the poison, but she does not out-heal the poison. Guild Boss, absolutely one of her biggest homes. And I say one of her biggest homes because kind of anywhere you want to put Delores, she's going to be useful. So in things like Guild Boss, one of the biggest things you want to do effectively with her is find a place for her where she is hitting the most amount of champions. So for early game players that are just starting off, you are probably not going to be investing in your fighters nearly as much as later game players do, because they get more stats. They get better use of their stats once they are 6-starred, and then the gear gives them much better stats as well. For newer players, make sure that your Delores is hitting all of your damage dealers and that your damage dealers are able to hit the dragon. There's no reason to put somebody in a place if they can't hit dragon, so always double check that. For the more experienced players, so anybody like mid-game, so if you have, let's say, 10 6-star champions, I will say that is the starting of mid-game. And everybody's going to disagree with that, but for my purposes in this video, if you're using Delores, a perfect dragon team would incorporate 3 fighters up front, each of them being hit by Delores, and then 3 platform champions also being hit by Delores. So you would have 6 damage dealers in total, a healer, possibly 2 healers, and then 1 or 2 buffers, because Delores would be one of those buffers or debuffers. So in my team specifically, I use Delores and Mary as my support champions. I play with 1 healer, and somehow my math is off. I'll figure that out later. Oh, because you can't have 10 champions summoned. That's why my math is off. Artifact Material Raid. Absolutely phenomenal. As long as you have a platform to heal everybody, she can be very good, and giving off that attack bonus is crazy. However, when you get down to 1 platform, most players are going to need a dedicated healer. So make sure you don't get too attached to that massive damage boost unless your tank for some way can sustain themselves indefinitely on the boss. So if you built like a tanky Wrath, not what most people would encourage, but possible. Tide. I do not use her in Tide. Maybe she is better in Tide than I imagine, because her giving off that attack boost to everybody she's touching would be valuable. However, I find that I prefer the damage dealers in those places. I'll have to do some experimenting in Tide and let you guys know. Resource Raid. This is not one of the best places for her. So there is a small argument for the Gold Raid, or if you need your runs to be a little bit more consistent and you notice like maybe it's the final wave of the EXP or the second to final wave, you notice that your champions aren't killing things fast enough. Yes, absolutely use her for the attack steroid. I just don't think that it makes much sense to have her here. Experience rate is usually not too tough, so it's very easy for you just to, place her. You don't need her there. In the gold raids, a lot of the enemies are tougher. I could argue, yes, to have your gold raids be more consistent, you could use her there for sure. Gear raids. Everywhere. Everywhere where you need the damage. Anywhere where you need the burst damage. Gear Raid 2, I would say, is probably her weakest of the 3. Gear Raid 1, she's absolutely amazing. I can't imagine any team not using her in Gear Raid 1. Gear Raid 1 also has the platform setup that makes the most advantage of Delores consistently. Gear Raid 2, there are certain placements where she can be good. However, a lot of the times the enemies aren't out long enough that you need Delores. I guess, though, you could summon her out, ult with her, kill off a wave, and then unsummon. Always possible. Gear Raid 3, there are times where you're going to want to burst down the boss or all the little minions that the boss is summoning. So she could be very effective being back further, and she might only need to be buffing one person. Do not stress her in Gear Raid 3 buffing everybody. You might only need 1, maybe 2 people being buffed to kill off the boss or to kill off the little minions there. In the faction trials, she is part of the Infernals. The Infernals kind of have a weird setup, so think about where you want her and just place her where you feel like you're getting the most value out of her. There's kind of 2 main locations. As you play through it, you'll understand like, oh, I want her here, but I also want her over here. And pick your poison. Pick whatever one makes the most sense for you. In the basic trial, she's all right. A lot of the platform setups make it difficult for her to be as effective as she wants to be. Doesn't make it impossible, just makes it difficult for her to be amazing. So I will say that the basic trial I don't think is the best place for her. I meant to leave a guild boss open for my Delores run, and I 100% forgot. So let's just go ahead and do this the most sloppy way that we can think of. You won't be able to tank that. And I didn't bring her. Guys, this is a common video mistake. When you record, make sure to set up the area. Let's not do artifact material right now that I think about it. It would be a good place to show off how much damage she can do, but not very necessary for sure. Harpin, can you bump out for a moment?
I'll serve you right.
So I do have an Awakened 3 Delores. I have been blessed by the RNG gods that when I pulled 1, I pulled 3. One of our best positions for Delores, make sure that when you place her, there's nothing wrong with placing her here, but obviously we do get more value. We get an extra 3 squares, you know, by summoning her here. Try your hardest to place her somewhere where you do feel like you are getting the most value out of her. So as we can see with her dancing, it is a double attack per rotate. Like, she rotates twice, she will heal twice during that rotation. So here, we're clearing out the wave just fine. I'll wait for the next wave for her to ult. Ideally, one of the biggest strategies with Delores is that when you turn on her ultimate, you are turning on every other subsequent ult. So these guys have their ult. You would ult so that they get the attack steroid, and then you would ult with them. And as you can see, my Comet is getting to the point where he can kind of one-shot entire waves on Gear Raid 1. This is 118. And I'm actually very frustrated because my Gear Raid 118 is perfectly fine. However, notice that my Comet is taking damage here. That Delores, you know, she is constantly healing him. But all the damage he is taking, she is not your dedicated healer. She is healing for about 2,000 to spend. And that is definitely not enough. But as we can see, Delores' ult just ended as I got my Comet's ult. That is kind of your big, like, no-no. You would want to try to sync them up as much as possible. Or if there's any content you're struggling with, that is a strategy of Delores that you want to play around with. You absolutely want to make sure you are taking the biggest advantage of Delores' buffs so that she's buffing up ultimate damage, which usually scales a bit harder with attack. Victory!
Torn them limb from limb.
And not the best. Kind of just stats all around. Not bad. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for Delores. The reason I'm keeping this video kind of quick, I kind of feel like everybody knows Delores is top tier, or everybody does talk about Delores being top tier. There's nobody that you will ever ask and be like, hey, is Delores bad? And somebody's going to be like, oh yeah, she's terrible. No, unfortunately, her kit is very, very well designed for the current meta, being attack focused, being heavily attack percentage, and just any attack stat you can get is a good attack stat. This is a champion where you dump stats onto her, but she then spreads the love to everybody else. So for that reason, I don't want to spend too much time giving her kind of the same review other champions get, because also too, her kit is straightforward, is just use her ultimate to burst up all your other attaching champions, and she will feel fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, if you liked the video, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. If you found this video helpful and want to join us on stream, we stream every day, Sunday through Wednesday, over at twitch.tv/sprinklebeard. Sunday through Wednesday. I think I might have already said that, but cool, saying it twice for good luck. Thank you very much for watching, and until that next time, ta-ta.